morning, everybody. Welcome. I'm thrilled to be here. In that, I don't know if the slides are going to pop up, but this is my third or fourth time presenting here. Love it. Love the energy in the room, and the keynote this morning was just awesome. I come to you sort of as a lawyer and a digital marketer. So I'm going to throw a lot at you today. If I lose you, save questions. I'll be able to answer them at the end. But my goal today is sort of educate people about what's possible. I started with a buddy of mine 19 years ago who loved practicing law, and I love the business and marketing and management side. So we divided and conquered and built a law firm, Price Benno, which was just now up to 46 lawyers doing PI, criminal, family, trust and estates, things like that. And then about 9 years ago, got the bug to take our in-house team that we had used to scale the law firm to help law firms around the country scale their law firms. So today I'm going to throw a lot at you. Built an amazing team that has a ton of information. I'm sure I'll lose some of you, but I hope not. But the idea is, how can you maximize your web presence? Today, the question is web content that clicks, because content is so important. And I hope to give you as much value as possible about how to take your website and produce it in the way that will allow Google to show you in the most favorable light, get you the most clicks, the most calls, and the most revenue. So quick question before we start. How many people here have a consumer-facing market, meaning you're marketing to people, criminal, injury, and the rest, how many people here are in the B2B side, that they only have B2B clients? So the content part that we're going to start with today is really, it's focused for everybody, but the B2B clients is one of those areas you can get that expertise out. As we morph into local search, we're going to talk more about how to be found regionally, and that's one where the B2C people should take particular notes. So we will start with content. And that topic today, we heard about it during the keynote, AI. AI is everywhere. What does Google actually want from us? And they have made it clear, they've changed their guidelines to move things from things that help people to, if you look carefully, to content written by people. Google is scared of what AI can do to sort of polluting the web, and their goal is to give the greatest value they can so that when people are searching, like, yes, this is a great answer, they come to Google, they see the ads, they click, they make money. So everything that you can do as an end user, as a law firm, to put that great content up there, Google is attempting through its algorithm to show that. So a lot of people, as an agency, we would see people come to us and say, why should we pay for content anymore? We're just going to use AI. And the truth is, at least now, and it's going to get better and better, much of AI content, if you just go to ChatGPT, people can tell. You're like, oh, this is great, it's awesome. AI is an important component of what you're going to be doing with content. But if you set it and forget it, it's at your own peril, because it is possible for Google to detect what is pure AI and what is not. And so that's what we're going to spend a few minutes talking about. For those of you that are concerned, if you have outside people writing, this is one of a number of different softwares that are out there that will give you a score. It is not perfect, but if you're worried about somebody on your marketing team just dumping stuff on your website, this is one of those checks and balances that's there, that's becoming more and more important. I see it with my teenage kids. They think they don't need to study anymore. They can turn in papers that are just AI driven. So here, this is one of those things, and teachers are starting to use these things to make sure that people are just not going to ChatGPT and turning in crap. So using AI for content, where should you be using it, right? So this is where AI is incredibly powerful. Coming up with ideas of what you want to write about, making sure your grammar is right, rewriting content for voice. There's a lot that can be done, but remember that unless you control the universe of information, the content you're producing, if you go straight to AI, can be first very sort of repetitive, but more importantly, you don't know what the source of that information is. It's great when you're doing something like a thank you letter where you don't really care, but as you're trying to produce great content for your law firm to represent your law firm, make sure that you're using it as a tool to supplement, but not as that origination piece. So content is king. But how do I make it convert, right? So you have content on your website. How do I make sure that I'm making money with it? And this is where I want people to sort of think about Google has pushed harder and harder over the last several years for authoritative content. They have EAT as their guidelines, and the goal is they want authority, expertise, trustworthiness. They want to make sure that what is being said by somebody who knows what they're talking about. Many of you that I've met last night and previous conferences are amazing at what you do. You spent years honing your craft. There's a kid who just graduated law school working in his mom's basement, and Google's trying to distinguish you from him. And that's where they're looking for that expert value of content to make sure that you're differentiating what you're producing from what somebody could do with ChatGPT. What added value are you giving, and making sure that you show that through different touch points. So this is where we want to sort of emphasize that when you're writing for the web, you want to write for humans while optimizing it for Google. So you want it to be great, compelling content that makes sense. You need to make sure that you don't forget to include the keywords you want to be found for, but you don't want to go to the spammy tactics of just including the same keyword over and over again. When I started in Washington, D.C., we had like a Washington DUI website, and we had the same Washington, D.C. DUI lawyer was said over and over and over again in different permutations. Google gets what you're doing. You can signal in many different ways. So make sure the content is for the end user and not trying to trick Google. At the same time, make sure that you're mixing it up and demonstrating that you are part of the ecosystem so that all the different versions of how you would want to be found, and then it's natural and not seeming jarring where you're writing for the Google bot. So I'm going to sort of move to the technical side, because as you take content, the goal is how do you put it on your website to make sure that it's found by the most possible people. And these are sort of, if you're looking at a checklist, because I am not a technical geek, but I have a lot of people who are technical geeks working for me. These are the sort of main things you want to make sure are being hit, because this is what will take the content, whether you write it, and if you hate writing, dictate it now, or use one of these transcription services, or use a law clerk writer, whatever it is that you're doing, or whether you're using an agency. Make sure first that the content on the website is optimized for mobile, right? When I first started giving this speech, it was like mobile was starting, then it was 50-50. It's now dominant. And if it just looks good on a desktop, it's not going to work. It has to be mobile friendly. Page speed, making sure the pages load quickly, because nobody wants to wait for their content. You're sitting there, we're all impatient, making sure the content pops up quickly, and that's done on the back end. Title tags and meta descriptions. These are things, they're very simple, they're free. It gives you the opportunity to tell Google, to spam them, say, this is what I want to be found for. The type of law, the jurisdiction, make sure that you have that, and descriptions that are compelling enough, because if Google shows your meta description, you want people to say, yeah, this is what I'm interested in. I'm going to click here and learn more, and that brings them into your firm. And the last piece, which is more technical, is schema markup. And this is where, throughout the website, it's the most technical thing I'm going to talk about here, you need to make sure that the language that Google wants is on the back end, demonstrating. You could say where an office is, these are reviews. It allows you, as Google crawls your website, to understand all the different pieces that are on it. And this is really, really important to make sure that it's integrated into your web presence. So we heard about AI this morning during the keynote. Google, which was late to the game with AI, is playing catch up. They're integrating it. One of the reasons my theory is they've been particularly hard on ChatGPT content is they were not the first player, and they didn't want basically somebody else to monetize. But they are now in the race to be the goal of the end user for all search results, right? So historically with search, they beat out Yahoo and a whole bunch of other search engines if you were old enough to remember the 90s. But now people are deciding, I may want AI results and search results, and Google has been integrating those into their search results. So basically, this would be a desktop result with some ads at the top and then a 3-pack. What we are seeing is that Google is basically the search generative experience, they are going through and giving all sorts of extra bonus information, good and bad. Good in that it's sort of interesting for the user, but it can have the potential when it's showing to push your search results further down. And I think we see this where people love AI until it doesn't give them the results they want. So there are certain areas that AI has been great, and it gives these sort of paragraphs answering a question. When there's a question, and we've all seen it, Google's been giving us AI answers that are pretty cool through Gemini, right? However, as you start to look at this, the downside is we are seeing certain search results pushed down, and Google's still trying to figure this out. So my goal as an SEO is to figure out how do I make sure I'm in the traditional search results, and as Google starts using AI to pull information, making sure we're present there as well. And these are the things that people are sort of focused on, which is answering questions. If you ever thought about rich snippets before where there's an answer to a question, this is the AI version of that. And as you're thinking about what content you're creating, you'd love to be able to sort of say, hey, what are questions that somebody's going to ask where I can be the answer? Now, there's a downside to the way they're demonstrating it right now. It may say where the source is from, but not always. So sometimes with a rich snippet, when you showed it, it was awesome because you got an answer and it went to your website. Here, sometimes you're saying, hey, it's an AI answer. They may pull from you. So this is one of those areas that's sort of a love-hate relationship as this gets rolled out for law firms. It makes the SEO that much more challenging. So here we're starting to see more and more impact on how this SGE is being shown. And as we see that, we're seeing that people's ads and their organic results are shifting. I think it's a long way to go to figure out where it's going to be at the end, but keeping your eye on this and making sure that you continue to create the content that Google is looking for, both for their traditional search and over time through AI. And here's an example of one of the changes. For years and years and years, well, not years and years, but we've had 3 search results in the local. Now we're seeing things as many as 5, and they're sort of advertising it as AI. I think it's sort of a marketing scheme at this point, but over time, I think we're going to see the combination where it's not separate AI results and search results, but Google's going to try to figure out what's right for a search. There are times when you want a list of practitioners, and there are times you want an answer to a question. And one of the things that I've seen, which has been disheartening for those of you that have websites with a lot of content, is that Google very often, by extracting information and then using it in AI search results, we've seen traffic drop for a number of law firms. That said, when it comes to intent-based search, where they're trying to find your law firm, that has not really dropped as much. So while your numbers and your analytics may be down, the people who need you in the end are generally getting the results that bring them to you. And this is for many of you guys here, and I've spoken to a lot of you that have interesting practices out of sort of the main fundamental, sort of the main larger practices, that as you niche down, this can be a very valuable piece, and that Google is looking for this niche information. And this gives you the opportunity to differentiate yourselves, even in a crowded market like PI. If you have certain subsets of that you particularly focus on, this gives you the opportunity to shine where you might not have before. So as we talk about all of the content that we have here, these, for many of you who are doing a local area of practice of law, most people are regulated by their states, unless you're doing something like immigration or another national-based type of law, you're looking for people closer to home. And that's where the intersection of content and local interact, because local is where a lot of the people that you want as clients are searching and finding you. So with content and local, we're looking to figure out how to make sure that we put the information in a way that allows Google to see where you are and what you're doing. And that if you're looking for the best URL for something, that making sure that you've done everything you can with your Google Business Profile, building that out, because for the time being, that is the intersection where Google is saying, hey, we own this real estate in local search, the Google Business Profile, formerly GMB, and then we are basically going to take this information and we are going to put it in a way that somebody locally can find it. A few years ago, Google came out with the proximity update. And when they did the proximity update, they basically said they're adding near me to all searches, which is good and bad, right? There's a big player in a market and you have an office away from them, you may get some clicks in real estate that you wouldn't have before. But making sure that you understand that Google is looking closer to home, and that's where a multi-office strategy has paid huge dividends as people figure out how to get the most possible clients. So people always ask, how do I get into the 3-pack? Or as we're starting to see a 5-pack that's out there. And there are two different pieces that come together. The traditional organic search, which is content, links, and technical, right? Those pieces are what you get found in traditional organic search. With local search, the Google Business Profile is looking at signals like local citations, review signals, local link building, links from within your community, as well as the authority of the website bringing in the organic search factors. So Google's trying to figure out what's the best answer. If you're looking for something that's going to solve your problem, this is what the sort of the process that Google's been going through, which is organic, local, mold them together, give the relevant local results closest to somebody. And here is the heart of it, the Google Business Profile. And the Google Business Profile is your opportunity to basically show Google everything you're doing. You control it, and it's your responsibility to make sure that it's right. From pushing for reviews to making sure your hours are there, photos, videos, all these things. If Google had their way, they would pretty much control everybody through these Google Business Profiles because they own that real estate. It's almost their own website for your firm, and that makes things particularly challenging. If you guys have tried to book airlines or hotels, you find very often you may never leave the Google Business Profile or the Google interface where you're able to book things directly and never even get to the website. So it is extremely important that this is focused on, and that as you build multiple offices, that each one gets the love and attention it deserves, almost like a separate website for your firm. And here, people are basically looking at what is it that converts here. And there are, basically the 3-pack ranking factors. This is particularly important because as a law firm, there are only so many things you control. And here, free, you can make sure that your primary category reflects what you want to be doing. If you have a specific type of law, having those words in the name of the firm, using DBAs if needed, extremely important because that is a ranking factor. And that if you have that and somebody else doesn't, that would be an advantage. Proximity, reviews, these are all things that go into determining whether or not you'll land in this very important real estate. So one of the things that we've seen recently is the idea of something you control, which is hours of business, and that Google has started to look at not showing businesses when they aren't open. So one of the decisions you have to make, and there are great vendors downstairs that can answer after-hour calls, if you're able to push to 24 hours with a straight face, this is giving you the opportunity to be found. These heat maps, the green, good, yellow, almost there, and red, bad, if you're able to demonstrate that you're open, you will have an advantage over somebody else. So at 5:01, if you still want business and you say you close at 5, this is one of those things that can easily push you ahead. This is something we saw coming. Basically, Google starts to play, geeks like us look at what are the factors that we have that are allowing you to be seen by Google. And if they start putting things about hours of operation on, we take that very seriously. And basically now what they're doing is saying, instead of having a default where you might change what your how you want to see results, Google is presuming that, and they're presuming that if you're not open, that people wouldn't want to see you. Does it really matter if you're calling at 11 o'clock at night, the firm isn't open? But suffice it to say that there's an advantage to you if you can give the user an experience at that later hour through chat, through call, etc. And the evolution of services. So this is one that everybody in the room should be focused on, which is we all have different areas of practice of law we talked about at the very beginning, and making sure those the service areas, both geographically and the practice areas that you're in, are both right and filled out. Google has been going and looking to find ways to get the right search results for people, and that they've started to automatically add some of these, making sure that you agree with what they're filling in, whether you call it AI or otherwise. Their bots are filling in service areas, which may give a very bad experience if it's not something that you want to be found for. Just keep an eye on that. But this is one where you can actually put custom services. And this is something that allows you to get an advantage where other people, Google has its fixed it's fixed areas of practice. If you add your own, this can allow you to get search traffic you wouldn't get otherwise. So trying to add those custom service practice areas can be incredibly impactful. So we are seeing them in the, this is a great example, emergency room errors, not a practice area that Google gives you, but that way when somebody is looking for a search, Google likes to push what they're experimenting with. So when we see something that's out there that Google's allowing you to use, that gives us the opportunity to play with that, put it in, and right now we're seeing great success with that. So this is the sort of, I think, for many people here who how many people here have multiple practice areas, more than one, right? So with Google, it has historically been very difficult to battle that out. You had to pick one primary area and you were kind of stuck with that. So the guys who ran the PI department may love it, but the criminal guys were kind of bitter because they weren't getting the majority of the search traffic. All of a sudden, and this doesn't work in the most hyper-competitive areas, but if you're in an area that isn't super hyper-competitive, by putting the multiple different areas of practice, not that you shouldn't do it everywhere, it gives Google the opportunity to show you for all the different areas that you're in those Google local results. So historically, you'd come up for one, but really maybe a secondary. Google, over the last few years, has been giving the opportunity to be found for multiple things from a single profile. Having started this much earlier, I very often would create a separate or a practitioner profile for a different area of law because I didn't see this necessarily sticking. But if you have a single Google Business Profile, or you want to be able to use one for all of your offices because you have to get separate reviews as you proliferate those profiles, that this gives you the opportunity to be found for many, many more things. This is something that if you're using call tracking, that Google Business Profiles, the call history is no longer available, which means that call tracking numbers are that much more important than they were before. We're all trying to figure out how to allocate resources, and if you want to know where your phone calls are coming from, CallRail and other companies like that can provide numbers so that you can figure out where your traffic is coming from. And I'll sort of, before we get to Q&A, I'll talk about reviews. We could talk all day about reviews. It is something that is the bane of every law firm's existence. At the same time, is a necessary evil. The review count itself, the number of reviews, which used to sort of be a nice conversion factor, is now a ranking factor for Google Business Profiles. If you look at a competitive market, people below a certain number of reviews aren't showing. All the people with a certain sort of catchment area of reviews are there. I would advise that everybody in this room that has a Google Business Profile that cares about it, particularly the consumer-facing legal area, that this becomes something that you are concerned with. It's not okay just to delegate it and set it and forget it. You have to make sure. I can tell you from my own personal experience, I used to have Intake take care of reviews, and in doing so, we would very often get busy and they'd forget about it. Making sure that you have a plan that the firm buys in, easier said than done, whether it's incentivization or other methods, making sure that reviews are top of mind. Even if you don't care about them very much, the fact is that if you have reviews and you're in a position where you get one negative review, that can put a huge black mark on everybody, even referral people that are coming to you. So making sure whether you're doing prophylactically to make sure that you take care of reputation management, or if you're in a competitive area where you're trying to get the most, having a plan is essential. And that the reviews are one of the few things you can't outsource. They have to be real and genuine. There's more and more federal regulation on fake reviews. So making sure that this is not something that is ignored. I'm amazed at how many people have amazing law firms that don't show how amazing they are in the form of Google reviews. It is your currency, and it's really, really important. So I want to leave a few moments for questions, but thank you so much. I will be downstairs. Rebecca and Brian will be at the booth, the Blue Shark booth. But any questions you have, would love to answer them because I can geek out on this all time. Do we have any questions? I think first from the audience at home.
Yes, we do have a question from the virtual audience. How should you prioritize the authoritative content versus SEO?
Authoritative content is a piece of SEO. So it's not that I would look at them that the authoritative content is one of the three pillars of SEO: content, links, and technical, with local being sort of the fourth component. So it's not an either or. Great content is great SEO. Good question. I'm sorry. Yes, I believe if you click on this, this will get you the PowerPoint. And in addition, because we had limited time, I have a section on local service ads, which are right after this that you'll get in the deck. So local service ads are one of the ways where you can pay per call instead of per click. Very powerful in the personal injury space. In the rest of the B2C world, I like it tested, but please test it because it can get very expensive. And if you're doing, for example, high dollar trust and estates, it may not work as well because it's giving you a volume of calls, but not necessarily somebody who has great discretion, who's done research on you. So just be careful about rolling it out. Other questions? Because with the, got you right there. So the question is negative reviews, what to do, right? How many people are here have had a 1-star review left on their site? It's brutal, right? It kills you. I have a bunch of talking points on this. First, 24 hours. Don't go and say something stupid because your bar rules still apply. Attorney-client privilege is still there. Second, I find that 60% of the time, if you or somebody senior in your firm calls up to find out what the issue was, very often we have just a high maintenance client nervous in the middle of a case who's just upset, talking them off a ledge. So that's the best, right? Then it comes down. Google has ways to dispute those reviews. We do it internally at Blue Shark. You can do it. It takes a little bit of finesse. If it violates their terms of service, it will come down. Being blunt, it's very, very hard, even for stuff that violates their terms of service, to get it down. It takes a lot of, hey, Google, look at this. Once you've done all of that, I would say responding is very positive, but I would wait till you try to challenge with Google before you go back to play that. And then finally, as you sort of referenced, making sure that you have great reviews to go on top of it. That's why, going back to a few minutes ago, it is so important to make it part of your DNA. It shouldn't be something that's like, oh, it's a secret, we don't want to talk about it. Those of you with criminal practices, who really wants to talk about the great result you got? Because the whole reason they hired you is to forget about it, right? So what I would say is making sure you're creative, not fraud, but simply figuring out who can attest to the excellence of your legal services, using intake as an opportunity. I sort of, for many years, thought that the only way I could get it is at the end of a case with a paying client, and I'd wait till then. In the personal injury space, that is not good at all. By the time we give somebody a check, that money's been spent. The moment you tell them what the settlement is, that's a great opportunity. And earlier in the case, when you get a great ruling, that could be it. Or intake now has incentives, and they get people during sign up. Let's say you get somebody and you can't help them, but you get them to another firm. You're going to get negative results if somebody doesn't like the tone of your intake person. You know, it's like going to a 5-star restaurant on a Saturday night with a table for 8 and saying, can you take me? And they're like, no. And then somebody leaves a bad review. So the idea is, I think you have to be creative and make sure that you're doing everything you can, because bad reviews will come. As great a lawyer, I flew in, I'll leave you with this. I flew in with somebody who, not even affiliated with the conference, who has a longstanding, excellent family law firm in the greater region here. And I looked up their profile and had a really low ranking on Google. And this is arguably the best lawyer in the city doing what they do. I mean, they have every accreditation, but they've been trounced on but they weren't going and figuring out what they could do right. Because at the end of the day, two reasons you get bad reviews. One is people are high maintenance, but the other is your widget, is your legal production doing the work it needs to do to get 5 stars? And I think that as you talk about reviews with your team, it's in their noggin, their DNA to make sure that they get those great reviews and realize that the service they provide and that you provide is what's going to lead to the opportunity for that. So taking all of that together, long answer to your question, but very passionate about it. Thank you so much. The slides are here. I'll be here afterwards or downstairs. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time.